every business owner probably makes that mistake.
It's also one of the biggest pitfalls I have seen leaders make.
So that was probably one of my bigger downfalls.
Then it might be a fantastic idea, but it's not the right idea for us.
They were running ads that were doing like a 5 to 8x ROAS consistently.
And they did that by spending
multiple thousands every single day and 50K plus every single month. We hired the wrong person, just point blank.
It is a combination of Old Spice.
I'm on a horse.
Or what is that? Axe body spray.
Yeah, he's an Axe guy. Yep. On a sales team, there's no way that's going to work. It literally makes no sense. Obviously, you're inside of a corporation right now that is a multi-billion-dollar market cap.
Right.
It starts off with you're on two different sides of the table. You want something, they want something, but it feels like a tug and pull. And the game is, how quickly can you guys get onto the same side of the table? And
oh my God, yes.
Sure, there's psychology behind it.
No, there's the whole is he sexy or is he just tall?
Yes.
I'm 5'8". Not even. Now I'm 5'7", actually. I'm 5'8" when I feel confident.
So I've had an entirely different experience.
Oh, balloons are coming in.
I don't know if we want to break in with something a little more formal, but I did yesterday. Nico and I closed on. I acquired part of his company, so I'm super excited about that.
Tell me about this. What is this? I don't even know what his company is.
Yeah, so he owns a jewelry brand. But going through and doing a full blown analysis of it, it's it's a lifestyle business. I mean, he's selling a lifestyle, and I guess you could say lifestyle in the sense of traditionally you hear lifestyle business and you're hearing it's a business that doesn't take a lot of work, that just kind of produces cash flow, which to be fair is kind of what I'm hoping from this. But also he is selling a lifestyle. So it's mostly jewelry. They've got rings which he curates, necklaces, earrings, and yeah, it's been, I want to say they founded in 2018-ish, really picked up during the beginning of COVID. And then they kind of hit a lull. For them, that was, they were running ads that were doing a 5 to 8x ROAS consistently, which in the ecom game is stupid, almost unheard of. They were just, selling out left and right. Ads are super profitable. And then when the iOS 14 came through, as well as the EU privacy law changes, the guy that was running their ads did not know how to circumvent that, which was around the same time we were picking up our ads in Prosper and went from, spending a measly $100 a day to spending multiple thousands every single day and 50K plus every single month, because we knew how to circumvent that. And for people that knew how to circumvent that, ad costs got kind of cheap. Not kind of cheap, they were historically cheap. Because basically what happened is all these people that were buying ads got bullied out of the game because they didn't know how to play it anymore.
So when you say it's a lifestyle, I mean, tell me what you mean. Lifestyle business. They're selling a lifestyle.
Yeah, I probably got to be careful how much I say in because I'm probably not going to take the time to edit this out. I need to learn more, so I don't want to put my foot in my mouth. But it's not he's not just selling jewelry. You can go online and Google jewelry, and there's 1,000,001 stores. That's not their differentiator. Is that he is truly curating a collection that you're buying into a feeling, you're buying into an energy, you're buying into, you're slipping on one of these rings to have more confidence to go on a first date or to hit the clubs or to go to a festival. If you want to go just buy some random jewelry, go to the mall. That's not us,
So that's interesting because there's, have you seen that Simon Sinek talk where he talks about, how Apple markets versus other organizations? That Apple doesn't sell you a phone. Mm-hmm. They sell you a lifestyle. Yeah. They don't sell you a computer. They talk about being a creator. They talk about being an artist, and they talk about they're selling you a sense of values and being part of a community and developing a certain kind of skill set in life, and the values are at the core. And then they're saying, so we're here to support the life that you want to have by giving you this MacBook or this iPhone or this iPad, but their whole sell is not about the tech specs. I mean, they go through that stuff, but it's not about the tech specs. It's not about the affordances. It's not about the constraints. It is about you're a creator, and or you care about, products that are carbon neutral, or you care about, these 4 or 5 values.
Yep.
Um, and as an organization, we've created the technology to support the values and the lifestyle that you want to have.
Yeah.
That's why you want to have that's why you want to buy our product.
And that was why so connecting with Nico, I just was organically catching up with him. I didn't like reach out to him to buy a piece of his company, but in talking to him, he was explaining some of those things, and I wholeheartedly believe in that. I also have no idea how to create that. That's not a passion of mine. That's not like I don't wake up and think, man, I just love building brand. I love building culture. Even like that's not really in my DNA. I appreciate good culture, good brand, good identity, and try to have like live it in my own life. But I don't wake up like excited to create it. Nico had done a really good job already creating it. That foundation exists. I don't even need to come in and tweak anything. It's just there. Now the things I enjoy, which are building marketing and sales, creating systems, doing a lot of that nitty gritty things that in the business world a lot of people consider boring. That's my passion, and it's not his, and that's where their lack is. So we noticed pretty quickly that there was a good marriage there. I think similar to how you and I have kind of started up, working on consulting stuff. It's like we know enough to. It was the same thing with me and Nico. We know enough to speak the language. Like I understand the brand side of it. I mean, I was a fashion model. I understand it. I'm just not passionate about it. And I don't want to work on it every day.
Yeah, yeah. The things that you say that you enjoy doing, I would rather shove a needle in my eye than have to dedicate my life
Likewise, man.
to. But I see the value of it, obviously, and I know that I have to be literate in it to engage in conversations and make decisions around it. But I am very glad that there are, in what I do right now, that there are people who are dedicated in their roles to taking care of that, and all I have to do is be engaged with the maybe some of the high level decision making around it, but I don't have to do it.
Both in our working relationship, but also with me and Nico. Like I trust you guys to do your vertical of the business. Like I don't need to look over your shoulder. You guys are experts in what that is. If anything, it'd be a waste of my time to look at over your shoulder because I don't. What am I even going to add to it anyways? Outside of coming together and probably processing some things here and there. Um, it's so much more fun this time around though to be playing the game of business with other people that you trust to that level, because I've truthfully never
Yeah,
done that, and it's probably a skill I'm going to need to refine too, of like actually trusting somebody else to that level, because previously that was probably one of my bigger downfalls, was bringing on teams of people and then not really letting them do much outside of just painting these lines, right? And there's certain roles that makes a ton of sense for. My forte is building marketing and sales teams, and for a marketing and sales team, specifically a sales team, that's generally what you're doing, right? Paint within these lines, fire them up every day, let them go eat what they kill. But then once we started hiring leadership for those, right, sales team leads, marketing leads, that's a different archetype of a hire altogether, and that's a different way of coaching that person. And I would try to take those same coaching frameworks and coach that person like I would a junior sales rep. It doesn't work.
hmm yeah. So trust and empowerment in leadership is probably one of the most important factors of being able to multiply yourself and scale up in an organization. Being able to have well-defined roles, well-defined job descriptions, and then hire competent people to do those, and then have the oversight, the transparency, so that you can coordinate, you can check in, you've got your KPIs, you can see if they are achieving the results that you need, and if they're doing that from the value perspective that you have, is really important. But it's also one of the biggest pitfalls I have seen leaders make. I work with leaders who are really high on the trust and empowerment scale with their folks, and then I work with leaders who are really low, and they are micromanagers. They look over their people's shoulders, um, They do not give them very much leeway in terms of decision making or taking action, and the results that they get show it. Because you can only, when you work that way, you can only get the results that one person can create. Then, if you have to be the hub in the center. So for you, if that's a new skill for you, what do you see as the big barriers to trust and empowerment?
I don't think there's necessarily barriers to it. I think it's just learning frameworks on how to actually do it and running with it. You're just creating more awareness around it. Because for me, I don't necessarily think I had mental blocks or like hard reasons why I wasn't doing it. I think I just didn't know how to do it. I kind of had a blueprint that I was more or less thinking in my mind, okay, this works, and probably not consciously thinking, but subconsciously believing the fact that this worked. So I'll just continue to do this, and likely not stepping back soon enough to realize, hey, like I need to go about this in a different way. Because anytime we had a hire that came in that for whatever reason just wasn't the right hire, there were really only two things that went wrong, generally speaking. And I would argue that both of them came down to the person that hired them, which was almost always me. And the first one was we hired the wrong person, just point blank. Usually what it was is we'd find somebody that we liked, and they maybe had character traits we liked or skill sets that we liked, and we started to try to kind of mold the role around that person. And for us, that was almost always the wrong thing to do, at least until we started hiring higher level positions, if that makes sense. Like these kind of like more management level roles. And it's almost like there's a curve to this. So in the beginning, when you're hiring a lower level role, a more in the weeds work role, that was probably the biggest mistake I'd make. Is like, hey, I like this guy, I want to make it work for him, and I just start like massaging the role around him. Right. An example of this would be on sales teams. You find a guy who you think you'd really like to work with, but he's only available to work part time, and the hours are weird, and he can only give you like certain stretches, and then he's like just not available for multiple days. Well, on a sales team, like there's no way that's going to work. It literally makes no sense.
Right.
But I think every business owner probably makes that mistake where they're like, I really like this guy, I want him on the team, I'm just going to make it work, but it doesn't. So that's the first one, is hiring these people that great people, not great fits. And that's ultimately that falls on the person that hired them. That's not their fault. The second mistake that I would find I would make is not empowering them, and the specific around that is not empowering them to own a outcome. Right? Because by nature, I'm not necessarily a micromanager. I mean, even in our first business, which was like my baby, I still let people go build and do their own thing and sit in a corner, and I'm not looking over their shoulder. I had my own fires to put out. I don't have time to put out your fires. But I wouldn't give them a construct of like, hey, this is your baby. Like, this is your business within our business. Nurture it, grow it, love it, own this outcome. And at the end of the month, when there's KPIs that aren't hit, it's on you, homie. And that was probably the second biggest mistake, where because you can do that even for lower level positions. And I say lower level, not in some derogatory way. It's just in the hierarchy of it. There might be a single salesperson,
Right.
even a junior sales rep, an SDR, where hey, your outcome is putting 20 calls per week on the closer's calendar. Or if you feel like your business is in a place where it's not quite that predictable and they can't own that outcome, deduce it down to the thing that they can actually own. Right? They might not be able to own how many people say yes to the next call, but they can own how many outbound calls they make or how many outbound emails they send. Right? What can they own? And then let them own that. And instead, we would hire people, and I think the easiest way to put it is we would just go easy on them and say, oh, like, don't worry, like that's our outcome. You're fine. Like, no, give them an outcome, let them own it. Because most people will rise up to that if you let them. And truthfully, if they don't, great. That's an awesome filter for get the hell out of here with love.
Yeah. I mean, it's a balance, right? Because so they're in sort of leadership perspectives, there's sort of the laissez-faire, just anything goes, right? And then you can go on the spectrum all the way to like authoritative micromanaging. I'm going to control everything. The sweet spot in the middle is what you're talking about, when you've got your KPIs, your key outcomes that you're looking for every month. That person owns that part of the business, but it's transparent enough what they're doing, and the feedback loop is at enough of a cadence where they can see pretty quickly how they're succeeding or failing, and you can see pretty quickly how they succeed or fail. And then you are, uh, when you're seeing that you're not hitting the outcomes, you're able to be in that position as a coach and say, all right, we're missing it here. You know, let's ask them open-ended questions. What's going on? Do you have the resources that you need? What skill sets maybe are missing? What information? What analysis? What else can we do here to skill you up or resource you in a way to achieve these outcomes? Is it an ability thing that you're missing, or is it a motivation thing that you're missing? Motivation I can't solve for you unless we just haven't done the right pitch. But an ability thing, if you're willing, but just you're missing, ability is different than knowledge, right? So I can know how to fly a plane, but not have the ability to fly a plane because I don't own a plane and I don't have access to a plane and nobody's going to give me access to a plane. So no matter how much I know about flying, I don't have the ability to fly a plane. So do you have the knowledge that you need to have? Do you have the ability? Have I resourced you, given you the access that you need? I can solve those things for you as a leader, because either it's a training thing or it's a resourcing thing. And so when you are able to step in like a coach, so in my role, I mean, we have every month a book of business meeting. I own my book of business. And so inside of healthcare, inside of my service line, I have about, I don't know, 8 cost centers that cover various programs that I oversee. I know what my forecasted goals in terms of volume, revenue, expenses that I'm supposed to hit. I own my book of business. I can tell you every single thing about my cost centers. If we're up, if we're down, why we're up, why we're down, what are the factors that are contributing to that? What are the levers that I have to pull versus what are the levers that my stakeholders only are empowered to pull? I own my book of business. I have to show up every month to a meeting with my counterparts in my service line and report out, here's my KPIs. Here's why we hit them, or here's why we didn't. Here's what we're doing about it if we didn't. Here's how we're going to grow next month. And we have a dialogue back and forth because I know what they do that impacts my book of business, what I do that impacts theirs. My boss gets to ask questions because then she has to show up and give an account to that for all of the rest of us to her leadership, right? And so she's not micromanaging me, but when I show up and I'm not hitting the KPIs that I need to hit, she's asking the questions of why not? Is it a resourcing thing? Is there an external factor? Is there a lever that she can pull from me that I can't pull because of her position? And then we're empowering folks. But you can, as a leader, take such a hands-off approach that you're just like, well, you didn't hit it. That's on you, buddy. And so I think there's a balance between, and the key to making that work is visibility and transparency. I know what my counterparts are doing. And so therefore I know how to coordinate with them.
Do you think it's role specific where you should land on that spectrum? Because on one side you're hands off, and the other side you're micromanaging everything. And I wonder if, depending on the role, depending on potentially the person in the role, right? But the certain roles are going to just be entirely different archetypes of people, and maybe they need to be somewhere different on the scale. And I'm not talking about all the way to extremes, but even if you're somewhere in the middle, maybe you're on the low side of the middle, high side of the middle.
I think you adjust how much direction you are providing folks. Yeah, certainly based on their skill set, based on their experience, based on their knowledge. I employ a bunch of medical technicians. Some of them by virtue of the kind of service that they're providing, had to go to like a trade school to learn how to do what they're doing. Some of them entirely on the job training. Um, and so we provide them with, regardless of whether they went to some sort of training or not, we provide them some on the job education. I have a clinical skills checklist. They have to be observed that they are competent in these skills and signed off before they're released to work independently. But once they are released to work independently in that role, um, my lead techs are not standing over their shoulder with every patient. Um, we do a series of audits of cases, um, and we do some coaching around that. Obviously, we have various ways of checking quality and safety and those kinds of things, but we're not standing over their shoulder. And then for my lead techs, I'm not standing over their shoulder in how they lead their team. They know my expectations around staffing, around expenses for overtime and that kind of stuff. Yeah, so I'll give you like a for instance. So I every pay period I get a payroll dashboard report. It says here's how much you paid, here's how much overtime. So I noticed in one of my cost centers I paid a ton of overtime, few times in a row. And I looked at the employees that were listed as having had that overtime. And I had two basic concerns. One, are those employees okay? Because they worked a lot of hours, and you work on that cadence, and for too long, you're going to face burnout. Two, why do I need to pay that much overtime? So I checked in with my lead tech. Hey, can you just give me an accounting for why we did this? Um, there was a logical explanation. She gave it to me. I noted it in my file in case it comes up later, and we moved on with life. Um, Another time I had the same thing, and I had to ask the question, why did we do this? And the explanation didn't make sense to me. And so I had to then direct and just coach like, well, in this situation, I think moving forward, here's how I prefer for you to handle that. So I guess the answer to your question is I still, no matter what level, I stay with, I use the image of like a bowling alley. Knocking down the pins is our goal. You need to be very clear on what your goal is. On one side, we have our values. On the other side, we have our policies and our resources, our affordances and constraints. As long as I have clearly communicated what pins you're trying to knock down, how I want you to show up as you try to do that according to our values, what our policies and processes are in order to accomplish that. I've clearly educated you, communicated that to you. I am not going to micromanage you. Anything that you do that knocks down a pin and stays between those two boundary conditions of our values and our policies and procedures is fair game. If you violate that, I'm going to start with a just culture approach. So I'm going to seek to understand what happened. Then if it was human error, I'm going to console and then coach. Here's how we handle that moving forward. If it was willful error, like I willfully knew what the values were, what the processes were, and I just chose to ignore them, then I'm going to do a corrective intervention.
And is that coaching always, because I heard you say a couple times, like, here's how you should do it differently. Is it always telling them, or is it trying to coach it out of them by asking questions so that they arrive to that conclusion on their own?
If you can get there with a coaching approach by asking good questions and getting them to arrive there on their own, that will always be a more effective approach for behavior change. Because if they arrive on it at it from their own conclusion, then it's something that they have internalized. If you have to tell them, you have to trust that they will process what you told them and that they will then internalize it. So if you can get there, um, sure. Now there's reasons or, why one approach is more appropriate than the other. If we're talking about, in my case, if we're talking about patient safety in the moment, I am not coaching. I am directing because I will not compromise patient safety. I will review with you after the fact, right? And then try to coach after the fact. But in the moment, if I can intervene for patient safety, I will. But if we're not in an emergent issue, if I can get you there by coaching, talk to me about how you handle this case. How do you think that aligns to our policies? How do you think that aligns to our processes that we had out? Walk me through what your decision making was on that. How might you have done that in a way that would have gotten you the result that we were looking for? And if I can get them there with a coaching approach and not compromising quality or safety, I will always take that approach.
How do you feel just in general with having regular meeting cadences, both with, obviously in your setting, you've got a ton of direct reports. You also have someone you directly report to. I guess I've never been in a situation where I technically directly report to anybody, but I've had a lot of direct reports. I've also coached people that had reports themselves, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on regular meeting cadences, where they fit in, how frequent they should be. And while you're thinking that over, I will share that one of our first potential consulting clients, I just had a quick coffee with them, caught up with them, and I identified pretty quickly that this business owner is probably not mature enough for consulting. One of the things that I thought was an absolute red flag was they shared, oh, we don't do any meetings. They're such a waste of time. They're terrible. And admittedly, I've got my own personal beliefs around it, but their belief why they're so terrible is because their background wasn't a place where they came from a law enforcement background where their team meetings were a joke, and they don't necessarily have non-public sector business experience. And I thought that was fascinating. But what are your thoughts on meeting cadences, their importance, or maybe you don't think they're important? I don't know.
I think, well, let me say this. I think that visibility, transparency, and coordination are incredibly important. How that happens can be through a series of standing meetings, um, or it can be through other communication formats. And I think you just have to be flexible to what works for your team. So I'll give you a couple examples. I think most standing meetings that are on my calendar are useless. They're wastes of time, and I often end up canceling them or not showing up to them. Because if
Are those meetings that you are running or meetings that you're inside that somebody else is running?
they're usually ones that I am someone else is running. There's someone else's meeting that I have to be a part of. I try to minimize the amount of standing meetings that I set up. Now, that said, we do several versions of standing meetings, but they're very quick. And we get it from agile processes, if you're familiar with that framework. So in my clinics, we have a huddle board, and we've got certain metrics that we report out on so my folks arrive at 7 a.m. We do huddle at 7:30 a.m. And we have, what are our patient cases for the day? What are the patient assignments or the case assignments for the day? Who's on staff for the day? Who had to call in? Just some very basic. And the information that's for that huddle is designed to set people up for, I know what's happening big picture in my clinic today. I also know what my specific role is today to achieving our overall goal for the day. That huddle standing meeting is typically no more than 5 to 7 minutes. It is a gathering. Does anybody have any safety concerns, any quality concerns? Yada,
So
yada, yada.
it's an information dump, more or less.
It's an information dump and a check-in. Anybody have anything burning that we need to address today that we need to know about? We then, at a hospital level, we have several versions of safety huddle where we go department by department, and it's any safety issues. We review anything that was from the day before. Is it open or closed issue? Still, how did it get resolved? Safety huddle. We do that. For my book of business, every morning, I get an email huddle because I run 6 different clinics, right? Outpatient clinics. So no matter where I am, even if I'm going to the agile huddle in the morning, no matter where I am, I'm remote to the other 5 clinics. So, and I have a MEG lab, I have an EEG lab, an MEEG lab, a TCD lab. I've got
So when
obviously
you say email huddle, like are you getting like a condensed report of a actual like physical huddle that happened, or is somebody like
it. No,
what are we talking about exactly with
it
that?
is several things. So, um, how many patients are scheduled a day? Do we have open appointments that didn't get filled? Why, are there any burning safety issues? Equipment issues, any of that kind of stuff that I need to be aware of. Um, what cases? Because I've got people in outpatient clinic, inpatient hospital units, and also in the operating room, right? So what cases?
And who's compiling this?
So my 3 lead techs are compiling it for their area. And then they're sending it on to one of my lead techs who just collates it into a single email and then sends it to me. I get that typically by about 9 o'clock in the morning. And that's how I know by about 9 o'clock in the morning, my entire book of business, what's happening in all of my spaces. And if there's anything that I was not aware of when I woke up this morning that I now need to direct my attention to.
So let's go back then, because some it sounds like the huddles you just described are probably useful for the most part. But when I first asked you that question, you said that there's some huddles that show up on your calendar that you intentionally
Mm-hmm.
try to clear off. Tell me about those. Like, tell me about the worst ones and the parts of them that you think are not worth your time.
So, in large organizations, one of the things that can happen from a culture perspective is being in a meeting, being at the meeting, being in the certain gathering is a way of trading social or professional currency, right? So to be in the room where it happens is important to, from the perspective of, do I have the social or professional cachet in my career that I want to have? Am I influencing the circles that I want to have? So oftentimes you can see where that drifts into we have councils and meetings that meet on a regular basis with these certain groups of people, that there's no real meaningful purpose to if you do it at that cadence on a regular basis. It's just about those leaders gathering and being seen, being in the room where it happens, quote unquote, right? And so when I was heavily doing executive coaching, I asked, I mean, everybody says in large organizations, oh my God, I have so many meetings to attend, so many meetings. I'm always in meetings. Now I'll complain about it. If I asked my executives that I coach, if you went through your calendar right now and you deleted every meeting in which the agenda wasn't clear, what decisions you were supposed to be making that day wasn't clear. Oh, balloons, that's a new one. Your role in that meeting wasn't clear, or what you were supposed to be bringing to the table in order to achieve or push the business forward wasn't clear, and you just deleted those meetings off your calendar, how much of your time would you get back? And the general answer, as we started combing through their calendars, was usually between 40 and 60% of their time could be reclaimed because there wasn't clarity. Maybe it's a standing clinical council, maybe it's a standing financial council or whatever, but it doesn't need to meet at that cadence. Not that that group doesn't need to meet, but maybe they don't need to meet at that cadence. Maybe it doesn't need to be a standing meeting. Maybe they need to review if there's a clear agenda for this week or this month's meeting around that issue. And if there's not, we can clear it off our calendars. Maybe I don't actually need to be in that room because I don't have a clear role or a clear stake or a clear contribution I can make. I'm just there.
Yeah, I think in that scenario, that's what it sounds like, where that meeting might be relevant. It's just not relevant to that person.
Correct.
Like they don't need to sit through it.
Correct.
But because I'm so curious where, like, because even in all those scenarios, that meeting still I think probably needs to happen. Like I'm curious if there's examples where it's like, this meeting is happening and it just straight up shouldn't happen.
There's a lot of this meeting could have been an email,
Okay.
right? Like the art of gathering and the art of information sharing is being able to ask the question, what is the right format for this information sharing? Sometimes the information speaks for itself, and it can just be on a dashboard that people can go look at, or it can just be on an email distribution that goes out on a regular basis, and people know how they're supposed to utilize that information in their decision making, and it speaks for itself. That does not need to be a meeting. There are other times where the information is more complex, or we need to be able to discuss the narrative around this information, tell the story around this information, and we need to dialogue together about how to take action with it. That's the kind of stuff that should be a meeting. But I mean, I've been to a lot of meetings where it's like you could have just sent out this slide deck and I didn't need to gather. I didn't need you to explain this slide deck to me. And we're not really having meaningful dialogue about it.
I think that's something that you and I are going to end up coaching a lot of people through because I've had an entirely different experience. I've never worked for large corporations that are, obviously you're inside of a corporation right now that is a multi-billion-dollar market cap.
Right.
Clearly, I mean, I've owned all the businesses I've worked in or had equity in them. And the last I checked, I'm not a billionaire. So I have just an entirely different experience where I think the meetings were some of the best things we had done. They were, albeit scrappier, but I think it's one of the culture things that we nailed early on, and it really helped us. I can genuinely tell you that our team would say the meeting was arguably the best part of their day, depending on which meeting it was and at what point. But there were three things that we had identified, and I was kind of listening to the things you were sharing about the meetings and making sure, like, is there something he mentioned that doesn't fall into a bucket? And I still think these three buckets are comprehensive, but I'd be curious to know if you think anything's missed on this. The first one is, like you mentioned, the information. And I do think this is where bad meetings overfocus on this, where there's just information dumps. Because that's generally speaking the definition of this could have been an email.
Yep.
But if you're just going to vomit information on me, put it in writing and like, don't waste my time, please.
Yeah.
I think the second thing is an element of coaching, getting feedback, sharing feedback, helping each other along the way. And that's best when that coaching is collaborative. I've been inside of meetings where there is someone that's in there coaching, and maybe that person does have more knowledge, more expertise. But if you allow it to become a collaborative coaching experience where everyone's helping everyone, that is a great place to be. And to be fair, a lot of the meetings I've been inside of are sales related meetings. I think it's easier to nail those, truthfully, because it's generally a more collaborative group of people. You're going to get more extroverts. You're going to get more energy. It's just a different experience. The third kind of bucket, I think, for these meetings that is probably the most missed, in my opinion, is the culture element.
Yeah.
Because those are a place where you're coming together and you're fostering that culture. And you're not necessarily creating it. You're not inventing it, but you're fostering it.
Yeah.
And to me, that became infinitely more important when COVID happened, when a lot of workplaces became largely remote. And I know, your experience, you work remote, so I'm sure you have a unique experience within healthcare, but most healthcare companies are not remote for the simple reason that they're in-person service businesses. And that's not to say there aren't remote employees, but that's where we saw, I've never, every single company I've ever owned has been remote teams. We've had team members in the Philippines. We've had team members in Europe. We've always been remote. And I think that's what forced us to nail these meetings early on, because in a normal, most people that were my age were getting jobs and they're going into these offices where they're crammed into a cubicle and there's 40 people around them and they're forced to create some type of culture, even if it's a bad one, because they're rubbing elbows with these people left and right. We were not affording that experience to our team. So we had to foster that in meetings, even if it was as simple as like, cool, we have our normal meeting cadence. Once a month, we're gonna have a pizza party. Everybody turn on Zoom and we'll send you a gift card to get some food ordered to your house, and let's share our life stories. And different example that probably doesn't apply to a lot of different companies, but yeah, I think those are kind of the three buckets that I've identified. Do you think there's something that belongs but does not fit in one of those buckets?
No, I think you're right. So information dumping. This meeting could have been an email. Um, the role not being clear or what's the agenda for the day is just gathering poorly. Um, but the culture piece is really interesting. So I actually work hybrid. I work both remote and in person. It's just that no matter where I am in person, I'm still remote to, a majority of my
Right.
team. But one of the things that I do that's not a standing meeting, um, but it's something I do typically 2 to 3 times a week is leader rounds, um, where I go and I walk around and I talk to all of my team that's in that physical location. And typically, what I'm doing, I'm connecting on a personal level. How's your day going? How are the kids? How's your spouse? Did you watch the game last night? All that kind of stuff. Just connecting on a human level, relating. Um, what's happening in your day that I can help with? What could I do to make your day 1% better? It's often where I learn about this equipment's broken or, we're out of this, things that I can address. Um, because it's a healthcare setting, I'm also often asking for preventative safety stories. So, how will the next patient be harmed is a common question. So, what are you concerned could happen because of something, a condition that exists right now?
Yeah. What are the downstream effects of what we're doing right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what's going well that I can celebrate?
Mm.
I typically ask different versions of those 4 questions in my leader rounds, and I walk around and I talk to every single employee that I can in those leader rounds, and I do that 2 to 3 times a week.
That was something we implemented where every single meeting, whether it was a client meeting, whether it was a team meeting, we actually started with wins. And what we found was that I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know the psychology behind it and like, this neuron fires in this part of the brain. That's not my answer. But we noticed that the morale overall in our meetings significantly improved because they were starting off just that starting off with that win, that dopamine hit, that like, oh yeah, like you could be walking into a meeting where like there are hard conversations that are going to happen. But when you start it off with, oh yeah, like there are good things going on, it's so disarming for everybody. So I almost always try to be intentional about starting that meeting with wins. Whether it's
Yeah,
just a round table, like, okay, cool, rapid fire, everybody drop a win, like everybody just give us your win for the day. I mean, we actually, depending on the meetings, we would require teams like the meeting starts with a win, you have to bring one. And eventually became something people were excited about. It can be awkward at first when you're starting a new team and you're building that new culture, but yeah, we found so much. I never wanted to save those until the end because it really set the tone for the meeting in the beginning.
yeah. In my context, it's a patient story. We start with a patient story. A lot of meetings,
Yeah.
because it helps ground us in
Why are we doing
why
this?
why are we doing this. So it might be a finance meeting that I'm in, but we start with a patient story, um,
Well,
to
it's great
help
too
us.
because your finance team largely is disconnected from why they're doing it.
Yeah, they're not on the front lines delivering
Yeah,
care.
they're not bedside, like, and thank God they're not.
Right.
If we think
Yeah.
doctors are bad, just try to see your accountant taking care of your patients.
Yeah. But they need to know that their Excel spreadsheet has some sort of connection to the care that's getting delivered.
Yeah,
Right. And so we start with that. So
we do that with sales teams like crazy, right? Because a lot of times your sales teams are getting beat down. They're getting more no's than they're getting yeses in most industries. The average industry does not have a 50% close rate. So what happens is they're constantly getting beat down. Their wins are great. They're collecting money. It can be kind of a lot of times it's a selfish win because usually they're getting some type of commission, but they're not seeing like, hey, Debbie that you enrolled into the program 6 months ago. Yeah, Debbie lost 50 pounds and like is healthy now. Or,
right,
hey, that school that we enrolled into our program to help them do a SWOT analysis. Yeah, they stopped the school shooting from happening.
right,
Like, or hey, our patient that our we've been working on the efficiency in this unit for epilepsy. Well, we were able to see 10 more patients than we possibly could have last month, and we think 3 of those 10 patients potentially might not have lived through their last seizure.
Right.
Obviously, I don't know the specifics, so you're probably hearing that example like that's not how that works, but you get the idea, right?
It's close.
Tying it back to that is so powerful because then it's like you said, this spreadsheet I'm doing actually holds weight. It matters.
Yeah. Yeah. This ROI that I'm doing right now is actually going to change how care is delivered 3 months from now. It's going to build a new program. That's going to allow us to diagnose, conditions more accurately, and more proactively. It's going to, it's about connecting it back to there's a human touch perspective. And no matter where I am in this process, staying grounded into purpose matters. And that's that culture piece, right? So when I'm thinking about culture, I'm thinking about how do we interact with each other, but also how are we grounding ourselves in our purpose, uh, our reason for being here, our reason for being in this role. How are we keeping that at the forefront of our mind every day?
Yeah, you talk a lot about culture for obvious reasons. Something that every organization I've been inside of or been able to run, um, we've started that culture with something we call mission, vision, and values. Having a clear mission on an organizational level, having a clear vision of how we'll fulfill on that mission, and having clear values in what way will we fulfill on that mission. Like, who are we being when we do it? What is our identity? And yeah, I was actually talking through a potential consulting opportunity for us with a client where I asked them, because for me it's kind of an abstract, like, oh yeah, what's your culture? You and I might be able to have a conversation around that, and I know we can get inside of an organization and pinpoint it. But I think you ask 99% of small business owners, probably more than that, and they can't describe it. I don't think they have the words to describe it. But if you can ask them, what's your mission, vision, and values? I've found that that's at least a little bit more tangible. And this organization, they didn't have one. I think they had like some boiler, stamped like, oh yeah, here's the mission on our website, and it's like, dude, this isn't even congruent with like what you're doing.
Right.
But my favorite part of that, and especially when you make it so tangible, is when you're scaling a business from, say, 500,000, which means, hey, you've probably got a product that's you've confirmed you have a product that not only works, but there's probably some product market fit. But there's clearly a lot of opportunity, right? If you've got a business like that that can legitimately grow to 5, 10, $20 million a year. One of the biggest lacks that I'm seeing is they don't have clear organizational values because they're faced with all these decisions and they're weighing them down. They don't know how to make them. You've got a founder or a CEO that's mentally looping on them. You've got team members that are spending ungodly amounts of time trying to figure things out, that if you're clear on your values, it's a 2-second decision. It's not even a decision. It's just like running it through a filter. And obviously I'm drinking the Kool-Aid that you're pouring a little bit because, for the last 10 years, I've been the sales guy that I'm a hammer. And I like to tell my friends that you're more of a fine utensil, but everything's a nail to me. But I'm drinking the Kool-Aid where if you don't have those values, scaling from 500,000 a year to 5 million a year is gonna be brutal because you are going to be faced with anywhere from probably 20 to 50 big decisions. And if every single one of those is a long drawn out, like it feels like a legitimate 50-50 decision, what are the odds of flipping 20 coins in a row and getting heads every single time?
Yeah.
It's zero.
Yeah. I think what happens for a lot of organizations is they have a moment, they do a retreat, they have their founders get together and they do an explication of their mission, their vision, their values. They make a plaque, they put it on the wall, and then that's the last time they think about it.
Hmm.
Right. And then they have like a culture creep where maybe because the organization, I've worked in organizations that have like 5 employees, right? Um, so when you're 5 employees, it's pretty easy to attend to those values because probably you're working with the founder or founders and their values are already internalized to who that individual is,
Mm.
and they are they're interacting in a way that embodies that. But then when the organization gets bigger, the founders, the CEO becomes more removed from people on the frontline delivery area. Those frontline delivery people didn't have that light bulb moment, that inspired them to start this business, and said, I want this business to work in this particular way, and this is our mission, our vision, our values, and this is my izakai, my reason for being, right? Those people are more likely to be people who said, I came to work here maybe because this is the kind of an organization I want to work for, this is the kind of a role I want to do, but oftentimes also because I need to make a paycheck.
Yeah, and this is the right opportunity to fulfill that.
This is the right opportunity, and that doesn't mean that they don't have good intentions by being there. They don't want to do a good job for you, but they didn't have the internalized aha moment, the thing that was like, here's why this is our mission, our vision, our values, right? And so they're more distal to that. They're more removed from that.
Yeah.
And so you can start to see culture creep where we then start to make decisions that aren't aligned to our mission, our vision, our values. So if a mission is our izakai, it's our reason for being. If our vision is what we're trying to, how we're actually going to embody that mission, vision is not only is an explication of not only what could be, but what must be, what should be. It's compelling, right? It's the picture that we're trying to achieve. Our values are how we're gonna behave in order to get there. Um, those employees further down the line didn't necessarily have that DNA injected into them. And if we aren't constantly connecting conversations back to those things, you can begin to creep and you can get to where you are just trying to get through the day and achieve certain outcomes without knowing why. And so you can end up achieving those outcomes in ways that aren't aligned to your values, or, you're not even chasing the right outcomes anymore. And so it's very important. I talk a lot about in multiple settings with my leaders who work for me as well as my employees. You come to me with an idea. I'm going to ask you, how does this help us achieve our mission? We have a plaque on the wall that explicates our values. Tell me how that is patient centric. Tell me how that is compassionate. Tell me how that demonstrates respect. Tell me how that demonstrates integrity. Tell me how that's innovative in pushing the quality of healthcare forward. If you can't make an argument of how it aligns to our values or how it helps us fulfill our mission while aligning to our values, then it might be a fantastic idea, but it's not the right idea for us.
Yeah, I see the same thing in smaller businesses where there's a lot of, I think, for newer founders or CEOs of because generally you're not dealing with an outside CEO at $500,000 a year. You're dealing with a founder led company at that point. You're generally not seeing CEOs until 3 million plus, depending on the situation in the business. That said, so at that 500 a year mark, that's in that general anywhere from probably 250 a year to a million. What I see a lot of is this shiny object syndrome, where this idea looks really good and this concept is awesome, and I saw this other organization that's in our niche that they're doing this, and it's part of why I love having that mission, vision, and values so dialed in, is because this might be an awesome idea. Maybe that's something cool to try, but is it aligned with where we're going right now? And I think on top of that, then also just really, because something I have always done with C-suite leaders is obviously our organization has an MVV, but you need to sit down and have your own personal MVV. And I would expect, right? I would hope you've made good hiring decisions, and there's a lot of overlap there. But you also want to have people inside the organization that have their own identity. They're not just carbon copies of the same person over and over, because I don't see I don't know of very many businesses where that's even helpful. But I think that, again, I keep saying it, but having that decision making framework is so useful, because that is, in my opinion, one of the number one constraints for these business owners that are trying to make that leap from that point of $500,000 a year to 5 million. Is you're going to be faced with a lot of decisions, and you need a lean decision making process to be able to say, this is the clear answer. We are marching forward. I've got as much clarity as I can possibly have. On to the next. Because you're either there's only two things you can do that are wrong. It's obviously making a clearly wrong decision, and in my opinion, wrong does not necessarily mean the outcome is good or bad. It just means you made the decision with the wrong amount of, like, no decision, generally speaking, in business is going to be 100%. But did you have enough information to make a credible decision and move forward? Did you actually lean on that information? Did you actually lean on your values? The second thing you can do is make no decision, which is every single time going to be the wrong decision. Because no decision is the decision, and it's the wrong decision every time. So that's
analysis paralysis.
Yeah,
we call it. I've seen a lot of leaders that have, in psychology research, we call it a high need for cognition and a low need for decision closure, right? So I want more information. I want more analysis. I want to talk about this more. I want to ruminate on this more before we make a decision. I want to have another conversation. I want to see another report. I want to see another data point before we make a decision. And at some point in time, no decision is a decision.
You know who's great with that? I'm gonna let you guess.
Who?
Sales guys.
You.
No, well, thank you. You're right. No, but usually your sales team is not only are they've internalized being good at avoiding that analysis by paralysis, because depending on the sale that they're working on, depending on the organization and what your product is, that's one of the biggest objection overcomes you're working on is generally coaching somebody through that to help them make a decision. Right? No more so than, obviously my first business was B2C weight loss coaching. Never am I in a situation where, like, oh, I don't know if I want to lose the weight. Like, clearly they want to lose it. I'm not on calls with people that have six packs, so there's a clear need. It's just, hey, is now the right time to spend money? Is now the right time to make an investment in myself, a time investment? Is, like, it's really just making a decision. So one of the lines I loved being able to kind of draw from, and there's, I think in a sale like that, you usually probably have a dozen kind of the same tricks that you're just constantly pulling out of the bag, was, look, it doesn't matter to me if it's a yes or a no. I'd love to see you healthier, but whether it's now with me or down the road with somebody else doesn't make any difference in my life personally. My only ask is that you do make a decision today, whether that is yes or no, right? Because I can help somebody that's a yes. If somebody's a no, I can send some resources and point them in the right direction. The only person I can't help is a maybe. And obviously that's, sales practices are very, they're very boiled down in like a B2C, like a true B2C offer, like weight loss. You're getting a lot of the surface level type sales tactics. But it's interesting because in most sales, it's the same tactics. They're just a little more mature. I wouldn't even say tactics, but it's similar conversations, right?
Yeah. So in that scenario, you're selling a product to an individual. So I'm in a different setting though. Like, I just did an RFP, a request for proposal, for a vendor to provide a service for me, right? So I have an existing contract. I wanted to go out and look and see, like, what else is on the market. Am I getting the best deal? Am I getting the best deal financially, the best quality? That, healthcare has updated, obviously, in the last, few years. And my current vendor has not updated their processes. Are there new best practices out there who's doing it, who are the players. So I and we have contract sourcing people who like manage a lot of this, but I went and said, all right, you know, interoperative neuromonitoring. That's what. So these are the people who go in and into the operating room and they monitor your nerve conductions provide that feedback to surgeons. Interoperative neuromonitoring. We use this company right now. They might be the best company, but I want to check. So I want to send out an RFP. We invited 8 different kind of big players to participate. We reviewed all of their proposals. We narrowed it down to 3 vendors to come in and do formal meetings with us with their proposals and allow for a Q&A with a bunch of our stakeholders. We've now seen those all 3 of those finalist presentations. So now I've got to sit down with my key stakeholders and we've got to make a decision. And there are, different things that we're considering. The financial concern, what does this cost? Some companies are more expensive than others. The quality and the safety, they might be more expensive because they're giving us better quality, better safety, better,
Sure.
better outcomes. And then also just like chemistry, are they an organization that aligns to similar organizational values? Like we require all of our suppliers to align to our DEI and J standards. So we have to consider all those things and we have to so in that setting though, when I heard the proposal, those sales reps saying to me like, can you make a decision? No, I can't. Not today. Like it's much more complex, right? So
Yeah, I mean and that's where I say like the the complexity is different, but the skill sets are oddly very similar from such a simple sale as a weight loss sale to a medical device sale on a multi. I'm trying to find the right words for this, but like on that level of scale, right? Like it's not like they're just like they're not sitting there selling you like, here's this one device, would you like to take it home with you today? Like
right,
this isn't like a door to door vacuum sale. Like we're talking about potentially implementing thousands of devices in hundreds of places over the next 18 months. Like
right,
it's just a different sale entirely. But I would argue the tactics and the tactical approach to it is still very similar. It's maybe laid out over a different timeline and it's got more maturity to it. Because what I would say the difference in, if you've got 2 sales reps to come in, and I'm going to probably fumble some of the specifics on this because I don't know that product, but if you've got 2 sales reps to come in, the first one is going to be, here's our product, here's why it's the best, here's the price point, here's why we're better than Johnny that's going to walk in the room next. It's going to be me centered.
mm-hmm.
The guy that's going to come in that's going to be, in my opinion, way more likely to get the sale, but quite frankly is just better at sales in general, is going to seek to understand you and what your needs are.
Right,
Do I even have a product that's a good fit for you?
right,
How can I massage this offer so that it is a better fit for you? Right? Obviously, and I mean that in an ethical way, right? Maybe maybe safety is like your highest thing because you randomly in the last year had a bad safety record, and now you guys are just laser focused on that. Great. Our product, they're similar. We can actually go another step though and offer this safety add-on that's going to make a big difference, and it'll affect the bottom line. But if that's your biggest need, we will make that happen for you.
right.
But that only happens from understanding their needs.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, getting the difference in that decision making pressure in a B2C weight loss offer, it's external. My sales teams are sitting there applying external pressure, pedal to the metal. Like, hey, like you need to make a decision. Hey, like, if you make a decision on this call because you're an action taker, we're going to offer you, if you make a decision now, we can offer you 20% discount. We just need a yes or no. Like, hey, even so, no worries. But if you say maybe, like, we're not going to follow up with you, we know you're not the right fit. That the sales rep in your scenario, they're still applying pressure, but it's all internal. Like, hey, we've got the better sale, we may have the better safety. Like, is that actually important to you? And not in like a condescending way. I'm boiling this down too much, but they're applying much more internal pressure. But it's still to close that deal, there's pressure from something. There's friction somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, they know they're not trying to sell us on a service. They know we already know we need the service. That's why we did the RFP.
Yeah.
What I think that they ask, in my experience, a lot, those kinds of pressured questions, applying pressure or persuasion is, what do you need in order to make this service work for you?
Yeah.
What are your biggest pain points or concerns? Is it cost containment? Is it upping quality and safety? What are your stakeholders interested in a solution around this that you need to solve for? Here's how we can solve for that. Okay, so now that we've met, we've talked that through. What do you need in order to be able to make a decision?
Right. Yeah,
You
exactly.
know, what is your decision? What is your decision timeline? They do ask us those questions.
Yeah, in those more mature sales, there's so much more of an exploration phase than there would be with a less mature sale. At a less mature sale, I'm doing a 15-minute discovery, and then I'm selling at that point. I'm molding a pitch, and I'm
Right.
hammering it away, because guess what? I've got another call in 15 minutes. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that the timeline for this has happened over the course of like probably 2 months.
yeah,
Um, I am now in a place where I'm ready to make a decision. I close to, because we've done the review. I've talked to my stakeholders. I kind of know what direction we probably should go. Um, but then, even from then, it's going to be, I will make a decision. Congratulations, you have won the pitch. Now we're going to go into probably about 2 months worth of contract redlining. We're gonna you said this on this line. Our lawyers say you need to put that. And I will walk completely away.
yeah, because you're handing it off to the next person in your organization to deal with
Yeah,
that.
I'll
Yeah,
walk. Let me know when we're ready for implementation, when this contract is signed, and so it's a much more. I don't envy like the sales reps, the folks who are then like my account reps. So I work with them on a regular basis. I try to be very good to them, because I realize what they went through to get a contract with us. It's a gauntlet, you know.
yeah, but I would hope for most of them, they're in that role because that's something that gives them energy. And I realize not everybody's afforded that. Like, some people have to go get jobs that they're naturally good at, or that's their best opportunity to make money, and it's not their thing. But I would hope the majority of them, they gain energy from that, right? Like, there's probably things in your role that they'd be like, "Holy crap! If I had to do that, end it now," right?
Yeah,
But for you, they give you energy.
yeah,
You know?
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, this is another way in which you and I are like yin and yang. You've sat on a lot in the sales position.
Yeah.
Um, I have never been in a sales position and never want to be, um, if I can avoid it in my life, because I just don't think I'd be good at it at all.
I'd argue that, but
Well, uh,
the best people I've known in sales are actually, they're not these like blatant extroverts. They also have a high level understanding of psychology, right? You are actually probably, I would put in an extrovert category, but maybe leaning slightly towards an ambivert, and you are definitely have a high level understanding of psychology, more than anybody I've ever employed, right? So
so let me amend my statement. I think I'd probably be good at closing a sale. Get me in the room and I can probably close the sale. I don't know that I want to go out and do lead. Maybe it's lead generation. I don't want to do.
sure, okay,
you
that's
know,
fair.
I could probably close the sale because I'm good at those kinds of conversations, driving people towards decision making.
Yeah,
But so you've been primarily in the sales position. I've been primarily, especially as of late in my career, on the I'm trying to acquire a service, and so salespeople are meeting with me, and I'm trying to make a decision. Um, and I have definitely developed a taste for certain kind of salespeople, over others.
Okay, tell me all about the sales guys you like, or sales people, I should say. Excuse me.
Sales.
Actually, no, this is gonna be way more fun. Paint the picture of the salesperson that you despise. Like, what is like the smell of the cologne this guy has on? Like,
It is a combination of Old Spice
of course it is.
and or what is that body Axe body spray?
Yeah, he's an axe guy. Yep, you're
He's
right.
an Axe guy.
I know this
Or
guy.
Tommy Hilfiger clone. You
Yep,
know.
he definitely bullied you in middle school.
Yep. He's definitely got longer hair that he kind of just swoops back with some sort of like pomade or grease. You know.
Okay, now that we're getting into physical attributes, I like this less, but continue.
um, he definitely probably wears like what Ed Hardy t-shirts on the weekends, you know.
Okay. There's like a
um,
demographic of listeners that just became offended. Like some guy is like sitting. It's like a Saturday afternoon. This guy's like hanging out. He's like, you know what? I'm really interested in like learning about consulting and businesses and potentially like and he's sitting there like you're drinking a beer, just hanging out, relaxing, mind his own business, and he's wearing an Ed Hardy t-shirt. And he looks down and he just caught the biggest stray of all time. He's like, what the fuck did I do?
well, since I have his attention, let me offend him even more. He also watches MMA.
Oh yeah, he definitely does. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. He probably listens to Joe Rogan.
but he doesn't pay for it. That's the big kicker. He's the guy that shows up at a friend's house that bought the pay per view, but he never pitches in.
Yes, yes, yes. Um,
And the fact that he even has like multiple friends that want to watch MMA with him also tells you something.
correct. Correct. And he probably thinks everyone's dream in life is to be able to own a boat.
Damn, he lives in Florida, doesn't he?
The person is you, Trevor.
Damn it, yeah. The turntables have turned. What just happened? Wow, yeah. Fuck. Good thing I didn't wear my Ed Hardy shirt today. My closet full in my office.
yeah, no, it's the person who is overly familiar with you, right? Like,
But haven't earned it.
but you haven't earned it. Like, you're pretending like you try to be friendly, but we're not friends, right? And I don't mean polite. I mean, so there's a
What's up, Chief?
oh my god, yes. So there's a concept in communication called like social penetration, and it's like how much of my life um, do you have access to, right? And there are verbal signposts about how much social penetration, how much relational intimacy we have, right? So if you say something like, you know, what's up, guy? What's up, chief? Blah, blah, blah. You're on a level of informality with me because we have some sort of familiarity, right? I'm always going to think what's up, chief is obnoxious, but at least if you're my friend, you can get away with it.
And maybe there's like 10% of the population that would like randomly land on,
But
but
there's a whole like category of what's up, chief type language, right?
sure. Well, there's two skill sets there that you, to be honest, an interview process like I'm naturally looking for with sales members, and if they got enough, I'll coach them through it. But if they don't have these skills at least somewhat naturally, generally speaking, I'm not touching with a 10-foot pole. So, because what I'm hearing is you're describing kind of an energy management,
Mm-hmm.
but there's two, which is kind of a soft skill. But there's actually two hard skills that go with this really well. The first one's tonality, like really being able to manage your tonality. Right, you and I
Know your
are
audience.
yeah, we're excited right now, but I'm not screaming into this microphone. I'm also not talking like a mouse. I've got a healthy cadence and rhythm to my speaking. It fits the room, right? You're using your inside voice inside. You're using your outside voice when it's appropriate. The second one, which I actually think is a bigger one, and I think but it's also less utilized, is the skill of matching and mirroring, which I think is what you're starting to allude to. Is if somebody comes in and just hits you with a "What's up, Chief," not only do they not understand this, it's probably never crossed their mind. Like they probably don't have the EQ to even explore this,
Yeah.
right? But if they understand that, okay, you're a little like, I would jump on sales calls where somebody, there was a long time where we were just targeting women between 40 and 60 that are dealing with menopause. Well, pre-COVID, I'm asking them to jump on a Zoom call. That wasn't comfortable for many of them. So you jump on and they're already a little flustered, they're a little uncomfortable. So you'd come in with just a very, very calm, very nurturing. Hey, Tina, how are you? Yeah, you know what? Zoom is tricky for me too sometimes. I totally get it. How's your day going? That's awesome. Yeah, I had a really, really awesome day too. Thank you so much for sharing that. Just
Why do I feel like
very,
you're picking me up at a bar right now?
yeah, I am. I am. It's Saturday morning, but I'm always picking up at a bar, Rob. But no, but it's being able to like kind of that read the room and that matching and mirroring, and it's all, to me, it's all energy management. But those are two hard skills that if you're someone who doesn't feel like they're good at energy management yet, those are the two hard skills you can go work on.
Yeah, yeah. I think that the third thing is understanding the agenda for the call. Understanding
Yes,
that in my case, there is a big difference between an information seeking call and a decision making call, right? So if I am in the mode of information seeking and you are in the mode of trying to drive me to a decision, the decision from me is going to be no. Um, because in my setting, I'm making complex business decisions. Rarely can I get from information seeking to decision making in the same interaction.
sure. And which is normal. That's what we, from a mature buyer, that's normal.
Hmm.
I with a business partner of mine a while ago, we identified that, because for the longest time we were doing these one call closes where you book a call and we're expecting our sales team to close on that. What we identified is, and this is one of those moments where like 46% of stats are completely made up, right? But what we identified is we felt like there was maybe only 5% of the human population that was in this boat of like, they'll go from basically not knowing what's going on, even, and maybe you've warmed up with some videos, whatever, but then on that call they're like ready to make a decision. Because
Yeah,
we were just, we looked ourselves in the mirrors and we said, look, like, we wouldn't buy in this process. We would, I mean, and maybe we're buyers. I mean, we're buyers of a lot of things. I've spent six figures on coaching programs. Like, I probably am a buyer of this if I needed it, but I would never make it in a one call situation. And the way you're describing is the feeling of how you feel as a consumer. On a sales side, we call that being in a buying pocket. And a really bad sales rep will make offers from outside of a buying pocket, or really try to push you into a buying pocket where that's something that the prospect or the organization that you're selling has to get to organically.
yeah, yeah. I just spent about $500,000 on new equipment, and we looked at three different vendors for this equipment.
God, that's got to be a sick home gym. Oh wait,
It's amazing. It's no wonder I don't have a six pack. So the the company that we went with was actually had in part their salesperson impressed me. Not the equipment, the salesperson. They sold me on the relationship that we were going to have after. The kind of support that I was going to get. And they did that by spending probably 90% of our time trying to understand what I was trying to solve for. You know, um, what what were our stakeholders' primary concerns, and then they did this. Okay, now that we have that information, let my team walk away. We'll put together a couple of solutions for you based on what we've heard you say today, and we'll send that for you to review, and then we'll set up another call for Q&A and to tell you can share with us how close we got to matching your concerns or how we need to iterate. And we did that over the course of probably like three different meetings. Um, and I ended up with a solution that exactly nailed what I needed and how I needed it to be. but I also at this point had a relationship that I with these folks that I knew, okay, after the fact that I buy this equipment and there's always ongoing maintenance. And I mean, you're with these people for a series of years while you own this equipment. I knew that I could trust that they were always trying to, they weren't just trying to sell something, which obviously they're trying to sell something, but
Sure.
they they felt like a partner in solving a problem I had, as opposed to just being concerned about the sale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, with our sales teams, I would tell them how quickly can you get on the same side of the table as the person you're working with, because often when you get into a sales situation, it starts off with you're on two different sides of the table. You want something, they want something, but it feels like a tug and pull. And the game is how quickly can you guys get onto the same side of the table? And it doesn't matter if you're jumping onto their side, if some prospects are going to jump onto your side, you both jump onto the adjacent side. It doesn't matter, but you just want to get on their side wherever they are and work with them, right? It becomes, and this is something I use a lot in my marriage. My wife and I, Cassie, if we have a problem, it's not me versus Cassie or Cassie versus me. It's me and Cassie versus the problem.
Solving a problem. Yeah.
Exactly. Even if I like did something stupid, which surprise, I do that every now and then, or vice versa, right? She does it far less often than I do. But even if she does something that I can't even think of a situation, but if she were to do something that pissed me off or I was offended by, okay, can I get on her side of the table and one, just try to understand her point of view, right? Seek to understand. Two, work with her to fight that dragon and not let her take on the identity of the dragon that I am fighting. And there are so many sales tactics like that the more I learned about sales, the more I learned about psychology within sales, I probably 10x'd who I was as a husband, because that's not a skill that like intuitively came to me. Like I learned it.
It's good. It's good. It's really good. Um, yeah, I don't actually know that I had that language around that that you just described, but that's exactly uh, what has been and continues to be important to me in um, choosing strategic partners to work with. Um, is they feel like partners trying to solve a problem with me as opposed to just trying to sell me a solution.
I thought you just picked me because I was pretty.
You are pretty, Trevor.
This is where in the editing I'll overlay a bunch of modeling shots just to like verify that I actually was pretty at one point in time before I just let myself go and
Before I just aged
yeah.
into the
This
crone that I am.
this is where I continue to have my 22-year-old LinkedIn photo when I'm 57.
Yeah, I told you the other day, like I still in my head I'm 25, but I'm realizing I'm turning 45 in a month. And I'm like, this is the age where you start to have conversations with your PCP about like all the preventative medical things you should be doing, as you age. And I'm like, oh my God, how did I get here? I'm 25.
Yeah, you sent that text and I was so close to responding and be like, yeah, I am definitely 30 years and 27 days and I feel it. Like every second I've been alive is stored inside of my knees and my shoulders right now because I'm having extreme joint pain.
See, I don't have that issue, but that's because I was inactive for the first 20 years of my life.
No, that's not the reason.
Um, what is the reason?
The reason is I'm built like a freaking giraffe and I'm destined to have health problems. I don't want to manifest anything, but there's like it's amazing to me that I haven't had knee issues before being 6'6".
So are you saying that short people are
Yeah, like
superior?
you're going to be healthier, you're going to be happier, you're going to be wealthier, you're going to be prettier, and I'm just destined to be a troll under a bridge somewhere.
I
Like no,
mean,
I have a legitimate theory though. Like joking aside, I think being tall there's like a it's like just a reverse. There's like an inverse relationship with how old you are and how valuable it is to be tall. Right? As you're growing, it's kind of awkward in like these all the way up till like maybe early middle school because generally speaking, like you're ganglier, you're just like more awkward. You're not as comfortable in your body. And then somewhere around high school, really in general, just like puberty, as you start to fill out, it's the best being bigger than everybody else because all of a sudden traditional sports come easier to you. You're going to get noticed by whatever, whatever gender you are attracted to is probably going to be attracted to you. Some like, it just like, I'm sure there's psychology behind it.
No, there's the whole like, is he sexy or is he just tall?
Yes, which, I'm just tall. It's fine. I have no shame in that. It's my entire personality. But then, you're also like in crowds and you can see over things. Like, it's just great. And then I haven't figured out where. I don't think I've like hit that truly downward trend yet. But there's going to come a day where the benefits are largely gone, and all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, crap, my life expectancy is shorter. I am certainly in more pain than an average sized person. Um, and you know what? Wouldn't trade it. I really enjoyed those younger years, but yeah, that's my theory.
I mean, maybe I'm healthier because I can't reach the snacks on the top shelf.
Hey, that's why you have Todd. He just hides them for you. Todd's like a
He's tall.
tall guy, right?
Yeah, I think he's 6'3".
Oh yeah, he's a
Yeah,
giant. What are we talking about?
yeah, he's tall, and he puts things on the top shelf, which really upsets me.
I've got this dump of things I like about Todd, and after this call, I'm gonna make sure I put that on there.
So, I mean, as soon as we hang up, obviously I've got to get out on my bike ride, and so in the garage we have the bikes hanging on the hooks thing up against the wall, right? He installed the hooks for his height, not for mine. So when I go to take my bike down or put it up, it's always I'm standing on my tippy toes. It's always like a precarious thing. I step up onto our lawnmower, put it up in front
Oh
of it.
man,
Yeah,
and it's already awkward even if you're tall enough for it. Like, there's no good way to balance in that scenario. And then if you're already trying to like then balance on other stuff, it's just no.
yeah. Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. Every time I do it, I'm like, the hell did he hang me so high? And he's like, it's fine. You just go like this. And I'm like, yeah, it's 6'3", buddy. I'm 5'8". Not even. I'm 5'7", actually. I'm 5'8" when I feel confident.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. Well,
So
I think that's all we brought today. Is that the pod?
that's the
That's the
pod.
pod.